Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and today I want to share with you some books, games, and projects to help you celebrate Pi Day. So I'm going to show you the books in the game first, and then later on in the video you can see some of the projects that we did. Now this is a collaboration, so don't forget to check out the other videos in the playlist, and you can find that link in the description box below. Alright, so let's look at the books first. Now the first book I want to show you is one that we used in our geometry unit last year, and it's called Straightedge and Shadow. And I really love this book because it's written in a more of like a narrative format. It's also a little bit historical, and it really brings geometry to life. I learned so much, my kids learned so much as well, and we did a lot of these projects from this book, and you can also find them on my channel, and I'll link that playlist below. The next book I want to show you excuse me, is the Waldorf Book of Poetry, and this one has lots of different subjects and different poetry, and I want to take you to the math poetry for a minute because I found two poems that I think would work really well for today. Old Euclid drew a circle on a sand beach long ago. He bounded and enclosed it with angles thus and so. His set of solemn graybeards nodded and argued much of arc and circumference, diameter and such. A silent child stood by them from morning until noon, because they drew such charming round pictures of the moon. So that would be a nice poem to add to your Pi Day festivities. I have a couple of books for elementary age students. The first one is one of the circumference series, and this one is The Dragon of Pi. And this one specifically goes through how like the relationship of the diameter and the circumference of the circle and how you get to pi. And so this book is really great if you wanted a picture book to explain this, but also you might consider doing a project as well, and I've got one later in this video to show you. And the last book I want to show you, this one is just on math in general, and it's called Mesmerizing Math. And this one is a fun interactive book. It has a couple of flaps and things that you can look through, and there is of course a section on circles and circumference and diameter, and that's kind of nice to go through, as well as just other things on geometry and other areas of mathematics. Okay, the next thing I want to show you is this game, and it's not specifically related to geometry or pi, but I thought I'd share it with you anyway. And there are many in this series, and I do have a tutorial on how to play this, and I'll also link that video down below. Basically, you're trying to make 24 with the numbers that are on the cards, and there are different levels for these for this game. 1 circle is the easiest, and then 2 is medium, and 3 is hard. And this particular set is for ages 9 and up. So let's do a couple of cards so that I can show you how to play. So what you want to do is you want to either add, subtract, multiply, or divide these numbers until you get to 24, and it usually requires a 2-step operation. So for this card, you have a 1, 2, 4, and 3. So if you take the 3 and the 4 and you multiply them together, you get 12. And if you multiply it by the 2, then you get 24. Let's go on to another one. For this card, you have 2, 5, 7, and 7. So for this card, if you added the 7s together, you would get 14, and you could add that sum to the product of 5 and 2, which is 10. So 10 plus 14 makes 24. Alright, so I am going to link that video down below so that you can check out this game, because there are so many in the series and we really like them, and some of them actually get really difficult. But that is a simple game to add to your Pi Day festivities. Alright, so let me share with you the projects that we did.
Alright, so the first project I want to show you is an artistic representation of pi, and I want to show you 3 different kinds of paper. And I'm not going to use this first one, which is origami paper, because it's not translucent, but this is a good option if you don't have the other 2 kinds of paper that I want to show you. Now this one right here is a very thin tissue paper, and it's special because the ink is going to bleed off when you add water to it. This is different than the kind of tissue paper that you would use for wrapping a gift, for instance. Okay, the last kind of paper I want to show you is this kite paper, and this is typically used to make sun catchers, these little star designs that you can hang in the window because they are very thin and translucent and the light comes through really beautifully. And we're going to start out with this paper first for our first project. So I got 10 sheets of paper, and now I want to trim them down so that they are 1-inch strips, and then I'm going to cut them down further so that they're 1-inch squares. I went ahead and I printed out about 40 digits of pi using an Excel sheet on my computer. Next, I'm going to use some contact paper, and I don't want to stick it onto this paper. I want to put the paper on the back side of the contact paper. Then I'm going to go ahead and get a nice long piece because it ended up being quite long, and I'm going to cut this contact paper in half and keep the other piece because we're going to need it later. Now we want to go ahead and take off the backing from the contact paper, and now the sticky side is up, and below it you have now a template on where to put your little squares. Now this is a great activity for young children, for fine motor skills, and for counting and for sorting. So my 6-year-old daughter has no idea what pi is. Even if I explained it to her, she wouldn't understand it, but she certainly enjoyed putting the little squares down and matching them up to the template underneath. We finally got through doing pi, and we did it in rainbow order. We finally put that last piece in, and now we want to cover the whole piece again with contact paper. And this is going to be sticky side to sticky side. You want to be careful for air bubbles. Now, I didn't show you this, but I tried this about 4 times, and I still got tons of air bubbles on one side. But in order to reduce that, you just want to peel off your contact paper slowly. The only thing is it's really hard to get it straight. And at the very end, I went ahead and trimmed all 4 sides just so they were nice and neat, and that's it. We can hang it in the window, and we can see this beautiful artistic representation of pi. It's been a lot of fun. My kids have memorized about 10 digits of pi, and it's just really beautiful. Alright, so how do you actually find pi? It's actually pretty easy, and it's really thrilling to do this project. Now the first thing you want to do is take a piece of paper and fold it into 4 so that you know where the center of the circle is, and this will help you find the diameter more accurately later on. So we went ahead and put pieces of string over the circle that we drew, and I went ahead and put 2 pieces of string so we could keep one decorative in our schoolroom, and then the other one we went ahead and took off so that we could measure it. So we measured the circumference and the diameter, and you want to divide the 2, and we came pretty close. We did 3.2 and pi is 3.14. Now, to really bring this concept home, we decided to do it again, but this time with a larger circle. It's really important to do this twice with 2 different size circles so that your child really can see that doesn't matter what size the circle is, the constant is always going to be the same between the circumference and the diameter. And here we did even better. We got 3.16 and pi is 3.14. So we did even better this time around. Alright, so one more artistic representation of pi. There's that beautiful tissue paper. We want to go ahead and trim this down to 1-inch strips, and then again we're going to trim them again to 1-inch squares. It's easier if you stack these in order to cut them with the paper trimmer. They're so fine, they're not going to cut by itself. Of course, you can always use just a pair of scissors. Now I have a really large piece of heavy-duty watercolor paper, and I'm just marking off where I want to begin my digits of pi. And you can do it as many digits as you want. I think we ended up with about 20 or so here. Alright, so I'm just using water to get these to paste down onto my watercolor paper, but that's okay. They're not going to stay here for long. They're going to dry, and you're going to see what happens in a little bit after they dry and the ink ends up bleeding onto the watercolor paper. It's really beautiful. Now you could just stop at this and leave this as a very beautiful artistic representation of pie, just like our first project. Now we went ahead and added a little bit more water over this just so we could really make sure that that ink bleeds into the watercolor paper. You can see with the very first one, it looks really good and we have a nice square. And then as you go down, it's not quite as even, but that's okay. It's not so much to be accurate. For this one, it's more artistic. Now I'm going to go ahead and wet the whole entire paper with water, and then we're going to use some distress ink stain, and we're just going to go ahead and plop little droplets all around. And that looks really pretty just the way it is, but really we were trying to make like an ocean theme. Now we want to go ahead and draw the number 3 in over on the side. It's really pale, you can't see it until you add a little bit of ink over it. So you're basically seeing the 3 right there, and you could add a decimal and then you could see all the rest of pie. But we don't want to just leave it as that. I had some extra fabric lying around and a dowel and this little twig that I put a string on and a little paper clip that I cut, and we're going to turn this into a little scene of some sorts. Let's see what happens here. I'm going to go ahead and cut 2 little slits at the top and the bottom in this fabric, which looks like a sail, and I don't want them too big. I want them only big enough so I can fit this dowel in through the top and the bottom. The dowel is about 1/4 inch wide. Next, I want to keep everything in place with a little bit of hot glue down the center and a little bit at the top and the bottom. Next, I'm going to cut 2 slits in the watercolor paper so that I can fit my dowel in through the top and the bottom. And you can also add a little bit of hot glue to keep that in place. Next, we want to hot glue that little twig to the side of the boat, and that little twig has a piece of string on it that I also affixed with a little bit of hot glue, and at the bottom of that, it's a little hook from a paper clip. Now on a separate piece of watercolor paper, I went ahead and I added some blue in horizontal stripes to represent the sky and the horizon and the water. Now I want to put the 2 pieces of watercolor paper together. I'm going to hold it in place with a few paper clips on the side. I also went ahead and cut out the printout of pie up to about maybe 20 digits and put it onto that little fishing hook and kept everything in place with a little bit of hot glue, and that's it. It is hanging on the door and into our school room, and you can see that I moved everything so that it is vertical so that that 3 is actually a boat. And you're fishing for pie, and pie is kind of like a math fish of sorts. Well, at least that was my attempt at a unique artistic representation of pie. I am sure that you can come up with some of your own amazing ideas for celebrating Pie Day, and don't forget to check out the complete playlist of everybody participating in this collaboration.